I love to talk about these things that people find taboo or uncomfortable, like my bladder, talking about pee all the time online. All of the messages that I would get about my bladder, having to use a catheter, it outweighed all of that insecurity. Sometimes someone has to be bringing these things to light. It makes it easier to talk about in the future.
The MS Positive podcast is a platform where people living with multiple sclerosis come to share everything else they do with their lives aside from being an MS patient. Among our guests are artists, singers, bloggers, actors, authors, DJs, and much more. And yeah, also health professionals because we have to stay in the know. We're more than MS. Welcome to the MS Positive podcast. My guest today is a young Latina who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the young age of 11. Her name is Crystal Bedoya. She's a journalist and a content creator, daughter to Mexican immigrants who believes in asking questions and being her best advocate. Crystal has found a supportive community in social media and since 2020 decided to share her journey in different platforms, gaining popularity with her creative reels. Welcome, Crystal.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to finally be on your podcast.
I know. I'm happy that you're here. You were able to join us today. So thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Crystal, you have an amazing MS story. You were diagnosed when you were just 11 years old. So you fall under the category of pediatric MS, which we don't hear much about. Can you give us, in a nutshell, the story of your diagnosis? How was it for you when you were such a little girl? And what were the challenges that your family faced at the moment of your diagnosis?
So for me, everything started with a typical day in middle school. So I was heading home from school with my little sister, and I kept feeling the sensation of numbness, tingling, and like I couldn't really move my arm or my right leg. So it was on the complete right side of my body that I was feeling these symptoms or just strange sensations, right? And I kept telling my little sister, I can't, I'm starting to drag my leg, my arm like feels funny. And it's that sensation that you get when like your arm falls asleep or like your leg falls asleep and it feels a little funny, but it comes back, right? Well, unfortunately, it didn't come back for me. And at some point, even during that walk, I had to get my sister to help me walk home. And she kind of became like my crutch. And you can just imagine she's 4 years younger than me. So she was like a tiny little girl trying to help me like walk like the many blocks that we would walk to go home. And in the beginning, I thought, okay, like maybe it'll go away, right? I kind of in a way gaslighted myself as a child. And it wasn't until I like mentioned all of this to my parents and they're like, okay, I guess this is serious. Let's go to the hospital and see what they'll tell us. Unfortunately, I got a misdiagnosis in the beginning. They believed it was bacteria in the brain. Initially, even then, it was like very confusing. Like, okay, so what does this mean? We didn't get clear answers. Unfortunately, healthcare resources are very scarce where I grew up. And it was until a couple months later and us having to commute to Phoenix, which is 3 hours away, to see an actual neurologist and get my official diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And it was a more of a shock, but honestly just confusing the entire aspect of it. It was just something that we had never heard of. Even then, the challenges of having to deal with like language barriers and having to explain everything to my parents and basically translate and interpret everything, since unfortunately in all of the healthcare settings that I would have to go to, there was never a proper translator, a proper interpreter being there as a resource for my parents. So I took on that responsibility. Looking back at it now, I always think like, how did I do it? Like, how did I not just explode and give up, right? But I mean, I had to do it because my parents are like everything to me. And I mean, as a Mexicana, like they mean the world to me. So I wanted them to be informed. I wanted to keep myself informed. But I mean, the challenges have continued even to this day. But I mean, I try to do my best to keep myself informed and be my best advocate, but also have them on everything. So they're in the loop and we're just trying to do our best, even navigating this diagnosis almost 20 years later.
So you were put in the position of translating a very complex information, a very complex disease to your parents. First of all, you were just 11, so
Yeah.
how much could you comprehend,
Yeah.
right? And MS is really hard to explain. And doctors sometimes don't really give a good insight of what it is because such complicated information for the first time, you don't grasp on it. And when you're 11, even less. So I can imagine what you went through and then your parents as well. It must have been a shock for them and really they probably were puzzled. Like, first of all, what is this? And second, how do I understand the translation? Because, it's not as accurate when you translate from English to Spanish, and the words to explain MS are complicated themselves. When you went to the doctors, you mentioned something that caught my attention that there was not a service of interpreters. It gets my attention because I was a medical interpreter for I think 7 or 9 years, and I have witnessed from first row what a family like yours goes through when there's a language barrier and the doctors provide some information to the patients and then you have to interpret it or translate the best way you can so to render that message in a way that they can understand, but it's very challenging. It's a very challenging visit with the doctor when there's an interpreter on the phone. It's not as flowy as it should be. So I understand completely. I can see the whole picture. But you've been a trooper and you pushed through and you made it through the fire and your parents as well. And right now, you are very popular. Your MS journey actually opened doors for you. Let's talk about these collaborations that you have done with Genentech, which is big deal. I mean, Genentech, we know, are the manufacturer for Ocrevus. So you did MS visibility campaign or program for them, but also some other articles. Can you elaborate on that and share that with us, please?
Yeah, of course. So they actually reached out around 2021 to collaborate. And honestly, I was in the clouds. I like knew who they were, and I have honestly, I mean, and this is something that unfortunately I can't really say like to my friends and family like, "Oh my god, like you guys, this is a big deal. Like these people like create the medicine that I'm currently taking." Like it was kind of like also a fangirl moment in a way. And of course, I know that my fellow MS friends can definitely relate to that when we talk about these things. Like, this is like the big leagues, you know, like this is like Super Bowl type vibes, you know, at least for me. And yeah, like they wanted to collaborate and create some projects. And of course, I was like more than happy and like very thrilled to work with them. And thankfully, through the projects, I've been able to create content and videos, along with working with stories on their websites about my MS experience, but also talking about language barriers and what it was like growing up with MS as a child. They gave me the opportunity to be very creative with these projects, and that I will forever be grateful. I realized that doing content and just like connecting with my MS community has been such a joy, and it's really encouraged me to just be a better advocate for myself too, but also made me realize that my MS has opened so many doors and helped me connect with people from all over the world that I would have never imagined as an 11-year-old back in 2005, who was scared out of her mind and had no idea what was coming. Yeah, we made some really cool videos. I specifically asked for them to be in Spanish because I wanted them to be accessible, and I didn't want to take on having to explain all of this to my parents. I did tell my parents too, like, I made these projects in Spanish so that you guys can understand them. And if it meant that others in our community can also understand them too, like that's just the bonus. Some of the videos are amazing. There's some Latinx doctors that are a part of them where they explain more about MS. And we also had Mexican recording artist Jimena Sarillana perform in one of the projects, which honestly was a dream come true for me. I was a really big fan of hers as a child, and I loved her in the movie Niñas Mal. And honestly, it was just incredible. But yeah, really amazing projects. I hope everyone can have the opportunity to go check them out. Such a cool thing that I got to do.
That's amazing. And I really like the fact that you wanted them to let you write in Spanish and you were able to get that from them. It's the first time, I'll be honest with you, that I see something from Genentech in Spanish. So I'm so happy. I mean, it makes me very proud that you were able to do that because our Spanish community or Spanish speaking community needs very much to, first of all, to have access to information in Spanish, which I've said it many times here. The MS Society is doing, making a big effort to do that on their website, but also to see, read articles from patients that they can relate to and read that in their language. I mean, it's great that you were able to do that. So I'm really, really, really proud of you. Good job,
Yeah.
girl. This is a big deal. Crystal, you were featured in British Vogue, the magazine British Vogue. Like how? I'm so jealous. You are
Honestly.
awesome. Hello,
Thank you.
Beyonce. It's there. Like
Beyonce,
what?
Rihanna. That's who I was thinking about when they reached out to
That's
me.
what you were
Like
thinking.
in my head, I'm gonna be in the same vicinity, in the same space as
That's wild.
Beyonce, Rihanna. Like, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I thought it was spam. I thought they were joking. I didn't think it was serious, but they sent an email one week, and it actually happened the week that I got my infusion last year. My 14-year-old pug passed away, and I was just going through a lot emotionally, and I was very close. Like, I love that dog. That dog was my child. He was a family dog. We had him for such a long time, and I was just going through it. That infusion too, it was just not an easy one. It was very bumpy, and yeah, they reached out, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't think this email's like real. But then they reached out again, and they're like, hey, like, this is serious, like, we want you to be a part of the story with us. And I like couldn't believe it, and I was like, okay. I was with my cousin at the time, who is basically like another little sister for me. We were hanging out at the public library because I love to go to libraries. That's like one of my loves. And she was just like, I mean, you never know what'll happen, right? Just send them whatever they need from you, like answers, write whatever you need to write, and we'll see what happens, right? And there I was in the parking lot in my car writing all the questions and answers, right? I created an office out of my car. But I just sent them anything that they needed, any materials that they needed in terms of photos and just like quotes and all of that. And I honestly just kept thinking, like, I just hope it doesn't get scrapped. Like, I just hope that they don't end up transitioning and working on something else, because I, as a previous journalist, like, I know what it's like in the editorial process. So I was like, okay, we'll see if it comes out or not, right? Well, it comes out, and I was just like, this can't be real. In mi vida, like, I would have never, like, I dreamt about writing for these publications, but the fact that I was actually in these publications being featured, and especially talking about my multiple sclerosis, which at one point I wouldn't even tell people about. And for years, even for close friends recently, they would ask me and tell me, like, why would you never tell us about this? I mean, it's all about process and growth, right? But like, it was just something that I needed to learn to accept, that this is a part of me. Yes, it is an aspect of my life, but it's still a part of me. And I mean, I just choose to see it more as a companion and not as an enemy anymore. And I love the reception that the story got. People were so supportive and so kind, and it just made me think, like, this is just the start. I want to do more. I want to, like, create more space for us, create more space in terms of disabled creators, people with multiple sclerosis, people that live with chronic illnesses. Like, we deserve space, and we deserve to have a fulfilled life and be able to go out and have fun and enjoy ourselves. And we deserve to be happy too.
So now you have British Vogue under your belt. Just nothing, absolutely nothing. So you are a freelance writer. So you have written for a lot of publications. Health Grades, one, the National MS Society's blog. You also wrote for them. And tell me about what is Refinery 29? Why is it so special for you?
So this one was really special for me because I got to share and write about my experience going to a Rao Alejandro concert, who I absolutely love. Rao, if you see this, please, I love you. But it was an incredible,
Shout out to
yeah,
Rao.
shout out to Rao, Rao, love him. I had been looking forward to this concert for months. My friend had invited me. She was like, hey, like, come to this concert, like, I feel like it'll be good for you, because a lot of my friends know that I still try to keep myself safe. I wear my masks, and I'm very precautious in terms of my health. And she was like, hey, like, let's go to this concert, like, I'm inviting you, like, let's go. I was a little nervous about it since I was still adjusting to living with a catheter full time. So I live with a Foley catheter. I got in my head, to be perfectly honest. I kept thinking, I can't do that, like, how am I going to go to a concert, dance, have a good time with my friends and have to deal with this stress? But I was limiting myself. And so I was like, you know what? No, like, I'm going to go, I'm going to plan this out. I'm going to get a cute outfit. I'm going to hit up my friend who I've known since I was in high school. And I know that she's going to be fun to go with, and we're going to have a good time. And it literally felt like I took a trip down memory lane. And that's how it feels whenever I hang out with her. So shout out to you, Christina. I love you. It was incredible. It was a beautiful night. I will never forget it. And when I saw that Refinery 29 was asking for story pitches, I just thought, this is perfect. And they were down for the idea, and I wrote it up so quickly, wrote it up blasting the Rao Alejandro music again while I was writing it, trying to reminisce the entire night. And when it went live, there's this like sense of fulfillment, but this sense of like so much pride, and just, I'm happy that I'm able to connect good memories and good associations to certain things with my life when it comes to my MS. So I'm really big on like nostalgia and creating like these like beautiful memories with all of the experiences that I live. And now that I listen to like these songs, like, I always think that was a great night. Me la pasé increíble. It was a vibe, and I got to write about it, and it was amazing. Like the other story, everyone was so excited, and my friends were like, oh my God, this is like really cool. Like, and it taught me that you're experiencing a different life, but like, you're having a blast doing it. I mean, they acknowledge and they understand, like, my life with MS isn't easy. Like, of course it comes with its challenges. I'm in pain every single day. I struggle a lot with my symptoms, and we never know what type of curveball it will throw at us. I try my best to persevere, and if I struggle and I kind of want to give up sometimes, I allow myself, but then I tell myself, okay, we're going to try again tomorrow, and we're going to try to make the best of it. Yeah,
That's the
thankfully,
attitude.
yeah,
Yes.
thankfully it's been a good
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way to get through this every day. Yeah. So I admire you for that. It's something that we have discussed here. And I also speak about being resilient with my group members from my support group, or other platforms that I connect with other people that live with multiple sclerosis. That, I mean, it's very difficult. Definitely. It's a daily battle. It's the way I like to call it. It's a daily battle. Like you said, if we cannot do it today, then we take a pause today, we weigh it out, and then we revisit tomorrow. And that's the only thing we can do. But never give up, right? So you mentioned your catheter. I'm new to that. I've heard of it, of course, but I don't know all the details. How have you been able to navigate that? How is your daily routine with a catheter for people that don't know?
To explain to why I even have a catheter in the first place. So I dealt with a relapse back in 2020, May of 2020 to be specific. Initially, I thought it was a UTI. I unfortunately get those a lot because of my MS. So I didn't know what to do. So I went to the ER. They were like, we don't think it's this. And they got in contact with my neurologist, and he was like, yep, it's a relapse. It's not a UTI. And so I left there with a Foley catheter. I had had a Foley catheter before when I was 13, but it had been such a long time that I just didn't know what it was like. After many trials and tribulations, different urologists, we unfortunately didn't really see eye to eye, like certain urologists and I, just because they wouldn't explain what was going on. But also, they wouldn't give me options about what my life would be like. They would just say, "Oh, okay, you're dealing with this." And I would always like ask them a lot more questions to follow up with that. Like, okay, so what am I supposed to do? What are my options? What should I be considering? I feel like that's such an important thing as someone with MS or just a chronic illness period. You have to be asking a lot of questions because no one will advocate better than for yourself than you. I mean, finally found a good urologist after 4 years or 3, 4 years, and he decided that we were going to do the Foley catheter. I had worked with the whole self catheterization process before this, and that was just unfortunately not for me. I deal with hand tremors on a day to day basis, so it was just very difficult for me. And yeah, we started the Foley catheter July of 2022. I've still worn it, and I switched from my nighttime bag and my leg bag for comfort. And I mean, I will say it wasn't easy in the beginning, but I feel like since I've experienced a lot of self reflection and growth these last couple of years, I've accepted it kind of in a way. But I also thought, how am I going to make my life a little bit easier while dealing with this like colossal change in my life? I've traveled with it. I've gone to concerts with it. I go on my little matcha adventures with it. I even went ziplining with it the other day. I've ridden horses with
Wow.
it. So yes, I can't get, and I feel like this is a typical question that I get with it too. Can I get in pools? Can I go into the ocean with it? And
That was going to be my next question.
yeah, and my doctor did say like it really just depends on the person, but their best recommendation is not to do it to avoid being exposed to bacteria and infection. And I mean, I miss the beach. I miss getting in the pool, but it to me it's not worth it, you know, maybe someday with a different thing that I might be using to deal with my neurogenic bladder, which is what they describe my bladder to be now after the MS relapse. But you know, I still have fun with it. I enjoy myself. Yes, I struggle with it day to day too. Switching catheters, my morning routine, sometimes it could be exhausting, annoying at night as well. It can be frustrating. I got to do it. I learned to live with it and be patient with myself, which is something I share with all the time on social media. Be patient with yourself, show yourself grace, and show yourself kindness because life is already
Yeah,
hard.
be kind.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Thank you for those
Of
words.
course.
So neurogenic bladder, is that I know well, I don't know what neurogenic bladder is, but I guess you're gonna explain that to me.
Yeah.
But some people get a catheter because they suffer from incontinence and others because they cannot empty the bladder.
Yeah.
So what would be the case here?
So there's different ones, like you said. So incontinence, bladder retention, which is the one that I deal with. So my bladder doesn't know how to properly empty itself anymore due to the nerve damage caused by that MS relapse. I would always have to wake up throughout the night before I got my catheter placed. Wake up throughout the night, which they would call nocturnia or something like that. I know a lot of people deal with that on a day to day basis. Sometimes you just drink a little bit too much water at night and you have to go to the restroom. For me, it wouldn't even matter. I would stop drinking water like at 6, 7 p.m. My bladder would just retain it and it would decide, okay, well, you're going to be waking up at 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and we'll see whenever we decide to let you go to sleep. So that's when I developed insomnia. I'm very grateful that my catheter makes my life a little bit easier, but it definitely comes with its challenges. This is just the reality though with MS. You just never know what it's gonna throw at you.
Yeah, people think of MS like just people on a wheelchair, and it's
Exactly.
not just that.
Hmm.
There's so many things that MS can affect: bowel movement, incontinence, emptying the bladder. So your internal organs get affected as well. It's not just the physical that is obvious to the eyes. No, no, it's not just crutches and wheelchairs and AFOs and canes. It's more complicated than that. I mean, you are very strong
Thank you.
person. I First of all, you've been dealing with that for so long, and then the complications that came your way, and you're still rocking it because I see you on social media. You look really cute. Your
Thank you.
cute outfits. You're always you're always in concerts. You're getting your matcha tea. I mean, you're a very social person. You have a really active social life. I know you love matcha. You want to discuss it real quick?
You know what?
You know
Let's
what?
talk
You
about
know
it.
what? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Before you start,
Hmm.
I found I recently moved to the area where I live now, and
Okay,
I found this great coffee shop, and they have matcha tea
let's go.
with the what they call it, the poppings.
Oh, the boba tapioca.
I see it every time I go there, and I think of you.
I
I promise
am
myself I'm
honored.
gonna try it, and I am gonna tag you
Yes, please,
on my post,
please.
and I'm going to try. I've never had it before, so you got me like hooked. I'm into it now, so I'm gonna go get me one, and I'll tag you on my
Yes,
post
yes, please. You know what?
because I'm very curious
I'm
now. You
gonna
love it.
look.
You
I I fell in love, and it was a recent love. I recently fell in love with it, but I'm gonna look for places in your area so I could recommend you some places.
Yeah, that'd be great.
My love for matcha is infinite. I started liking coffee really late in the game when I was in college out of necessity. I was exhausted all of the time. College for me was a little bit different compared to everyone else. I was into Sabri, so that one was another infusion on top of going to school, having an internship, and also working. So it was just a lot and I was exhausted all of the time. So I was like, you know what? Let's try coffee. It was too much for me. So up until recently, my sister, she really likes matcha and she was like, well, why don't you try matcha instead? You've always liked green tea. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. In the beginning, I will say, I was like, okay, what is this? This is weird. As I started researching, because I love to research, I love to create lists, and I like to go on my little adventures. I started finding different matcha spots like throughout different states. So California, Arizona, sometimes in Mexico. I just fell in love with it. I love the taste of it. I know some people say that it tastes like grass. I love it. I enjoy
I like the
it.
taste of grass. I
I
think I
love
will
it.
like it.
I love it.
So I think I will like
It's
it.
a vibe and it's delicious and I love how people get so creative with it and I dream and hope and I believe words have power. I know that I'm gonna visit Japan someday and I want to go and experience authentic matcha, ceremonial matcha, and just have a good time over there too. I have a lot of big dreams. I always say soñar no cuesta nada. Dreaming doesn't cost a thing. And I'm going to make it happen because I deserve it. I deserve to have fun and enjoy myself and have a good time in this adventure of a thing we call life. But yeah, matcha is king.
Right,
I
of
love
course.
matcha. I will forever recommend it. Whoever that wants recommendations, whoever wants to be persuaded, but I also respect people not liking it because, I mean, we like what we like and we like what we don't like. And I respect that.
We're talking about your matcha so much because your reels have become very popular with your matcha post. So if you don't follow Crystal, you start following her now, you will see that she is definitely a matcha lover, and she posts a lot about matcha tea, and she goes exploring different coffee shops until she finds her matcha, and her reels are really creative, really, really, really nice.
I work hard for them.
So you pursue it. Yeah, you persuaded me, so I will definitely get mine, and I'll let you know. You have been in other podcasts as well, and I will mention the Multiple Sclerosis Fashionista
Yes,
podcast with
Roxy.
Roxy.
Yes.
Yeah, I have worked with Roxy briefly, through my British community that I work with Shift Hamas, and also saw you. with one of our friends, Damian Washington, for MS Views and News.
Yes.
How did that go? How did that go for you? Did you know him before that? Or
So we had connected a couple of years ago, so maybe like around 2020 or 2021. He was so nice, reaching out, like just asking me questions and like honestly offering support, which is something that I will forever credit our MS community. It's such a beautiful community. People can be so nice, so supportive. These people have become such a support system for me, other than my friends and family, and I will forever be thankful for them. But yeah, Damien is just a fun time. I love him.
he
He's so
is.
cool.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. Very genuine. I like his energy a lot, but he's very genuine. And he agree with you on what you said, and so do I. Where in the MS community you can find the most genuine, authentic people. I mean, this is the club nobody wants to be part of. But at the same time, our community, it's beautiful. We have people that are very supportive. I speak from my own experience. When I think my first account could have been 2017, something like that, 16, and it grew fast, and I found a lot of people that I could relate to. It was great because it kind of changed the perception that you have about multiple sclerosis. There's really good people, cool people out there,
Yeah,
right? There's young people that
yeah.
like you, that like the outfits and dress nice, and all the people that travel, and they show all how they kept going,
How
how
they
they
live their
kept
lives.
pushing through,
Yeah,
how they live life and celebrate life,
yeah,
right? It's amazing. So we're fortunate. We're fortunate to be part of this MS world, and you are everywhere in social media. Can you share your platforms with us?
yeah, of course.
I'm sure that people are gonna be willing to just start. If they are not following you yet, they will definitely follow you from this point forward. So share that with the people that don't know you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. I made a list. Threads, and it's just Crystal Bedoya. So you can basically find me everywhere. I create content for all of those platforms. Sometimes the content might be a little bit different for other ones based on the platforms like length policies and all of that. But like I just try to be creative and have a good time. I try to make a joke out of things because laughter for me is one of the best medicine. So I try to be fun. We're not. I don't try to be funny. I try to share my realistic experiences of what type of things my MS puts me through, because sometimes I'm just like, is this real? But I just try to have a good time.
You said earlier that you are constantly in pain. What other MS symptoms have you experienced? We know that you live with a cataract now, and you mentioned pain. Do you have like neuropathic pain, or do you have trigeminal myalgia? And the reason why I'm kind of breaking it down is because people have heard many times, and I apologize in the name of your neurologist if they have told you that MS, that there's no pain in MS. There's pain. There
Yeah.
is pain. Not everybody deals with it, but it is real. So, what have you struggled with, in terms of pain and other symptoms?
If we were ever to truly sit down and list all of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, it could take all day. You understand me perfectly. And this is the thing with pain, though, that I try to vocalize that more now, because I spent so many years, one, in denial, and two, dealing with medical gaslighting to the point where I was like, this isn't real. Like, I'm not, am I, like, I'm not experiencing these things because these people don't believe me. I feel like I got to the point where I just started masking. So I actually described that in one of my posts on social media, and a lot of people actually reached out to me about that. I learned how to mask my pain so well that people sometimes like are just, this isn't true. Like, I don't believe you. Like, you're fine. Like, you're happy. Like, you're going out getting your matcha. Like, you're going to these concerts. And no, like, I'm experiencing all of these symptoms while I'm experiencing these situations as well. So just, I mean, at the time, like I would always think like this can't be my reality because other people can't see it. But at the end of the day, who cares what other people think, you know? Like they're not living in my body, they're not living my experience, and I'm not living their experience either. Maybe they're going through their own things too. So, I mean, to each their own. But I deal with neuropathic pain. It's awful. It literally feels like you're being lit on fire and it just won't stop. I specifically experience that a lot throughout my legs and throughout my back. It's awful. It's really painful. I've dealt with optic neuritis in the past. It's very scary. There's been moments because I've experienced it a couple of times throughout my life where I thought I was going blind. And there was experiences too where I couldn't see out of one eye, and it was very scary. And I've dealt with the MS hug. I've dealt with spasticity. I deal with that one pretty often. It's very painful. I mean, the bladder pain is also very uncomfortable. I deal with like the bladder spasms just because of the neurogenic bladder. Honestly, I feel like there's times where I'm just like, oh, I'm still dealing with that and it's still like there and I forget because I'm just like I'm
Used to them,
yeah, I'm used to it.
right?
I'm used to pain. Yeah,
You're
I'm
used to
used
living with
to
pain.
yeah, I've gotten so used to experiencing life like
Yes.
this. I I know this sounds like really intense, but I feel like my body is sometimes my own torture chamber. That's why I stress the concept of being patient with yourself and being kind to yourself because it's a lot. It's a lot to be dealing with. And that's just MS, right? Like, and we're also dealing with our daily lives, dealing with our responsibilities as people. And it, it can be overwhelming. So I just try to take it one day at a time, one moment at a time, actually.
I can imagine when you were a little girl and you were in school. The school years are very stressful, and we go through so many changes, right?
Yeah.
Puberty. Let's start with
Ooh,
that,
yeah.
and then you were like right there, close to puberty, or even maybe starting puberty, and then dealing with all these symptoms. I mean, it must have been so overwhelming, like you said. Like, how do you explain to an 11-year-old that your skin is on fire? Like, it feels like from this point forward, you're gonna feel like your skin is on fire. Because I live with that. I have this burning sensation. It doesn't go away. I just, like you said, sometimes I forget about it, but it's there right now.
Yeah.
It's there. I'm
It's
talking to
there.
you,
Yeah.
and it's there because I'm talking about it. But sometimes I just forget, and but I don't know, for some reason when I'm relaxing, like when I'm going to get into bed and relax, that's when it amplifies and doesn't let me fall asleep. It doesn't let me fall asleep. I don't know if it's because my body's relaxing and then my brain is only reading that area that is burning. I don't know. I can make sense of
No,
it, but
I completely understand where
it
you're
is
coming from.
horrible.
No, yeah. When I'm finally in bed, I notice my tremors a lot more, and I notice my muscle spasm, sorry, a lot more. I notice that I start twitching like when I'm completely, and I wouldn't even tell you that I'm completely rested because I deal with anxiety and depression and a lot of stress. So I try to like slow my mind down, but that's when I realized, okay, the spasm is there. Like my tremors are there. I know, and I've seen this on TikTok and I think it's really funny, but sometimes I sleep like this because I'm trying to like calm myself. I think they call it like dinosaur hands or something like that. But I just notice those things a lot more when I'm like still. And it just makes me think like, oh, okay, so that's also happening, you know, and I just tend to forget about it. Just growing up with MS was just an experience to say the least. And one thing that I did want to talk about, and you mentioned like in terms of puberty and all of that, I feel like MS affects your body so much and so hard that sometimes we tend to overlook how much it's affecting you. And one thing that I've realized that and now up until this point is how it affects hormones, at least for women. And
Tell
when
me
you're
about it.
experiencing your period, like it affects me really terribly. And sometimes it really scares me. And then I'm like, okay, it's all connected. Like, how is it that I'm experiencing like these very scary symptoms and it's all supposed to go away, but technically it doesn't go away. It's just there all the time, and the pain is just even more unbearable during those periods. And I'm just like, When does it end? I want a break. Yeah.
Yeah, get me off this
Yeah,
train
like
already.
please. I did not sign up for this full-time job. You're not paying me.
Ah,
Leave me alone. Like at least give
yeah,
me a
I
little
know.
PTO. But yeah,
Yeah, but no.
it's been a learning journey for sure though. I am grateful that I've allowed myself to really take the time to like teach myself, okay, so this is what that's called. It wasn't just in my head. This is what this is what should be happening. But also, like you mentioned earlier, there are doctors that just don't explain anything to you. And I come with my little book of questions, my little notebook of questions, and if it bothers them, so be it. But I want to be prepared all the time.
That's a great tip. I mean, make a list on my phone. I have a little like a notepad on my phone, and I first of all because I will forget. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
same.
Big memory problems,
Oh yeah, brain fog,
which is
bad.
sad. Which is sad. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible. I promise I was really smart.
I went to school.
10 years ago, I was a lot better. I was sharp. I was the type of person that didn't have to write anything down, and now I forget to even to get to write it. As I'm, thinking of writing something, I forget. That's how bad it is. It's a big thing. It's curious that you mentioned the period. I just turned in. I just submitted an article about it. It's coming out soon. It's about menses and MS. They just don't get along. And this is something that I think there should be like a forum for
Oh
it because
yeah.
it's a whole different animal. And there's so much to it, when you are going through those days, your hormonal levels are up and down, and you have all these other things that come with being a woman. And then you have MS that gets really angry when you have your period. MS gets really angry. And now for me it's more intense now. Like I didn't have so much of an issue before, but now as I'm getting older, oh my,
Oh yeah.
I'm going through hell.
No.
Like
Yeah.
it's very challenging.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting topic. Definitely something that we should consider to discuss over here.
Next podcast.
Um, Next podcast. Special guest, Crystal Bedoya.
Talking about it. I love to talk about these things, especially things that people find whether taboo or uncomfortable, like my bladder, talking about pee all the time online. These are uncomfortable conversations that we need to be having and we need to normalize because honestly, in the beginning, I would always think like, "Oh, I know, I can't be talking about that. Like, that's weird, right?" But
Yeah, it's uncomfortable in the
I
beginning, definitely.
I got over that because all of the messages that I would get about my bladder issues and having to use a catheter now full time, like it outweighed all of that insecurity. And it just made me think like sometimes someone has to be the one having these uncomfortable conversations and bringing these things to light so that it makes it easier to talk about in the future.
Right. With all this that it's going on with you, a catheter, and you're still a young woman, I don't think I've ever asked anybody with MS in your life, are you planning to have babies in the future? Or is this something that you don't want to do for the sake of preserving your sanity?
I was actually just having a conversation with a loved one about this yesterday, and I've always known that I didn't want to have children. I know, like, at least for my experience growing up in my community, like, having children is like beautiful and it's a beautiful experience. And I think it's a beautiful experience. And I love, I love that people feel that way. And it makes me happy to see them reach that chapter in their lives. But I have never felt that yearning or that desire to have children. And I remember having this conversation when we first started talking about me getting on to Sabri when I was 13 with my parents. This was when I was hospitalized for 3 months because I was paralyzed from the neck down. And we were doing all sorts of treatments, all sorts of procedures to try to get me to a better point from where I was at. And I remember the neurologist coming to my parents and asking them, like, first, initially asking me, are you planning on having children in the future? At 13 years old. And honestly, that was a very loaded
You
question.
cannot answer that at that time.
And obviously in my mind, I was already thinking no. But logically, you would think, why are you asking these type of questions to a child? But obviously they also asked my parents too, and they just told the doctor, we're going to do whatever is best for her right now. We're not thinking that far ahead. I've always made that very vocal to my friends and family. It's just not something that is going to be part of my life. Again, I am the type of person who is like never say never, right? But I personally just I do not want to do that. And I do enjoy seeing other people with MS online share about their journeys, like when they make their pregnancy announcements or when they're sharing about their experiences trying to conceive. And I think that's so beautiful, and I love that. Like I love seeing people share their wins, their losses, like because that's what makes them human, and that's what makes our connections deeper, because we're accepting that they're experiencing like such a monumental change in their life and they want to bring new life into this world, and they're already living with MS, and that's already a struggle. And that's just something that I just don't want to do. And another part of that would be I've dealt with enough women and children. I have so much love and respect for people that have children. That's a whole different ballpark, and I will forever commend them. Not for me.
Yeah, and when you have children, it's not about you anymore. And with
Exactly.
MS, it's all about you.
Hmm.
So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah.
It's I wish I got the memo earlier. but
I got the
but I
memo
ended up
very
with I
early.
ended up with three. Yeah, yeah.
No, but I feel you though, and I respect that, and I respect you, and I know you've shared about your experience, and I commend you for that. And I love that I'm learning all about different experiences with MS through social media and with the connections that I've made because of my MS.
So, Crystal, what is your ultimate goal as an MS advocate?
My biggest goal would be that through sharing my story, being so vulnerable online and creating all of this fun and sometimes very difficult content for me is so no one feels like they're alone. So that was something that I struggled with a lot when I was first diagnosed. I didn't know anyone with MS. No one in my family has MS. So I'm the only one who has been diagnosed with that disease. And resources were not the best in my area. My doctor was really far from me. I would get treatments once a month in Phoenix. So I would commute all the time. I never really got to socialize with other people, other healthcare providers that would maybe provide me a better insight of what I was experiencing. I was alone. That made me internalize and struggle a lot. And I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 13, and I just felt overwhelmed. And so now, whenever I get messages or DMs on these platforms of people saying, hey, I just got diagnosed and I found your page and I think it's so incredible, or I love that you're sharing like your story so authentically and so even living with multiple sclerosis, like I appreciate that you're showing like the good, bad, and ugly parts of it, because that's what's very needed. Like, unfortunately, we can't really sugarcoat this type of an experience because it's not the same for everyone and it's not easy for everyone. And that's okay. And that, I guess that would be my biggest thing. Like, I want people to never feel like they're alone.
Well, you're doing a great job so far because, like you said, you're sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly about living with a mess. You are vulnerable. You're open about everything that you're going through, and that only already, opened the door for your goal. People definitely identify themselves with you, so we appreciate your boldness and being vulnerable and just sharing, raw, and it's great. So I want to thank you again, Crystal, for accepting the invitation to the podcast. I think you brought a lot of light for people. Thank you for sharing your story and for being so brave. Just want to express my admiration for you because you've been so young. You are very mature and you have been really, really strong throughout the years. So we want to thank you for that, really, because it sets an example and you're a role model for people out there in the MS world and social media. Keep it up, girl. You're doing a great job. I love your reels.
Thank you. I got a lot more coming too. So people follow me, go check
That's
them
great.
out, leave me a little comment. Like I love what I do. I genuinely enjoy creating content. I love connecting with people. I love talking to people. In my previous career as a journalist, it was very hectic, very stressful, and just overwhelming. And I feel like through social media and content creating and freelance writing, I can truly show what I'm passionate about and what I really love. And I mean, like I said, I'm just here to have a good time and connect with amazing people and just live a good life.
Of course. I think we should collaborate at some point.
Let's
I
do it.
mean,
I'm down.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right. So thank you, Crystal. And for now, we're going to wrap it up and I'll see you next time. Don't be a stranger. I'll see you next time. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Bye.